Good morning, welcome to our weekly live. My name's Joanna, if we've not met before, and we have 45 minutes together on Thursdays. Today's practice will be a yin practice for the hips. This was a class that was requested on the Facebook page, so here we are. I am always looking for your requests so that I can design classes around what you need or what you want or what will help support your learning on your course. So for today's class, you'll need some props, of course. In the corner, you'll see I have 2 blocks and a little chip foam block. And also behind me, this way, I have a bolster and a blanket. So if you have access to those items, bring them to your mat. And if you don't, then you can always make shift with pillows or cushions off the couch or sofa or off the bed. And we'll get started in Child's Pose. I'm going to offer you a version of Child's Pose that is quite restorative. So feel free to come into that version, or you can come into a traditional Child's Pose without any props underneath your body. So I'll leave the choice to you. If you would like a Child's Pose with props, you're going to place a blanket perhaps under your knees, firstly for some comfort. That can be under your knees and ankles. And then you're going to locate your 2 blocks or thick books, and you'll place those on the mat, one in front of the other with a little gap between them. And then your bolster will go on top. From there, you'll bring the whole setup a little closer to you, and you're going to lower your front body onto the bolster. So starting with your belly, your rib cage, and then one of your ears. Your elbows can be quite bent, forearms to the floor, and eyes starting to close. If this variation isn't for you, then you can remove the bolster, remove the blocks, or maybe just keep one block for your forehead to rest on. So you can still have your arms nice and bent. Or you can remove all the props and have your forehead to the floor with your arms extending long. If the bolster would be better served under your hips and between your hips and heels, then feel free to place it there. We're basically making an opening shape that is comfortable and grounding for the body, and that allows you to come into a place of rest and release for the lower back. So once you've found that position, I invite you to close your eyes and take some clearing breaths. So nice full inhale through the nose. Big exhale from the mouth. And 2 more like that. Big inhale. Big exhale. 1 more cycle in. And out. And then just letting your breath settle, letting your energy settle, letting your physical body settle into this shape. So in this class, we will be focusing on the area of the pelvis predominantly. But as we know, everything is interconnected. So of course, we're going to tap into releases for lower back and belly, the hamstrings and quads. So being open to the offering. And because this is a yin shape and we'll be holding the shapes for time, you'll want to ensure that you are never in any physical pain in these shapes. So making sure that your props are being utilized to support you. And if you are in any pain, meaning anything that feels sharp or electric in quality, please listen to those indications from your body and make gentle adjustments to find a comfortable place again. or come out of the pose entirely and maybe find something to counter what you've just done. And then you can always come back in if it feels okay, or find something neutral so that your body can settle for a few breaths. In Yin, we want the body to move into a place of either compression or twist or stretch, but never pain. So it isn't a passive practice, it's very active. We're looking to create length and space around the fascia and connective tissue, but we are not looking to create any pain in the joints. Let's take 5 more breaths here in Child's Pose. And when you've completed your 5 cycles of breath, you can start to move into tabletop position, so coming onto your hands and knees. So if you have props underneath your body, you can slide them to one side. You can keep the blanket under your knees for cushioning. You'll want to stack your hands under your shoulders, your knees under your hips, and you can have your toes tucked here or untucked. Let's take a gentle cat-cow to lubricate the spine and hips. So inhale, tilt your tailbone towards the sky, soften your belly towards the earth and rise your chest and chin. And then exhale, begin to round your back and look towards your belly button. And again, inhale forwards and up. This is your cow pose. And exhale to round the spine, cat. One more cycle, inhale forwards and up. And exhale to round. Coming back to a neutral spine, I'm going to give you 3 options here to get into the outer hip and thigh. First one is pigeon, second is deer, third is thread the needle on your back. So if you already know these 3 offerings and you know the one you want to take, you can come on in. We're going to take the right side first. If you're not sure, I'll guide all 3 and then you can make your choice. So from hands and knees, I'll show pigeon first. You're going to slide your right knee behind your right wrist. And you're going to wiggle your right foot towards the left side of the mat. From here, you'll extend your left leg long behind you, resting the top of your knee and the top of your foot to the floor. If there's a big gap between the right hip and the mat, you can always put a prop there. From here, you'll come up onto your fingertips for a moment, or flat hands to the floor. Roll your shoulders down your back and just see how things are feeling. This is offering the compression to your back, while also creating a nice length through the front of your torso and into your left hip flexor. You have the option to keep that right heel close to your midline or to move the right heel away. Some people move this right leg towards a 90-degree angle in front of them. Some keep it a lot tighter towards them, all depending on your hips, your knees, your ankles. And then the next piece here is to come forward, so drawing your body into a fold. So for that, you might bring blocks underneath your forearms, maybe blocks and a bolster. You can start to place your forearms onto that support. Or some of you will bring your forearms onto the mat. Maybe you just keep a block for your forehead. And just check that your shoulders are away from your ears, that your hands are relaxed, that there's a nice length through the back of the neck. There is a softness to your lower belly. And here we are, this is Pigeon Pose. The other option from this position is Deer Pose. So the difference being is the back leg is bent. So you might move your blanket so that it's underneath your left knee for support. Your right leg is still your focus. So again, that right heel can be as close or as far away from your midline as you like. The left leg is pretty relaxed behind you. You don't have to worry about that one too much, but definitely keep the flex in the right foot. And again, same options, keeping your chest and hips facing forwards. You might choose to fold forwards and rest forearms to props. Maybe your forehead to a prop. Maybe you don't use any props and you place your hands on top of one another and do a forehead to your hands. The third option is thread the needle. So this is done on your backs. So this is a great option if you have knee sensitivity. This might be an option that creates a little less pressure on the joints. So have a play with this. You're on your backs, your right leg goes to the sky, your left knee is bent. You'll externally rotate your right leg and cross your right ankle to your left thigh. And then just assess how this feels as you widen your right knee, flex your right foot. Is this enough sensation in your outer right hip and thigh? If it is, great, stay like this. If it's not, you have the option to place a prop under your left foot. So you're just gently bringing your two legs a little closer. Or the third option is to bring both legs into your chest and hold the back of your left hamstring or around your left shin. Continuing to widen that right knee, pressing your right forearm into that inner thigh. And you can remain still here on your back, or if it feels good, you could try rocking across the back of the pelvis or making circles on the back of the pelvic bowl, as this might add to the massaging quality into your hips. So those are the three options for the right side. That was lots of talking. So please now make your selection if you haven't already and come on in. Make sure that whichever pose you're in, you are feeling a stretch, a dull stretch around your right hip and thigh. Not a stretch that is overpowering or too intense, because we're staying here for time. So you're looking for that Goldilocks position. What is the place of effort and a little stress upon the body, but also a place where your body feels relaxed, that you can breathe with ease, that you can settle in. That's the place to be. Because when the body is in that place, we are able to go a little deeper perhaps. The body might start to invite you in a little more. You might be able to fold forwards a little more over time. But we have to be patient. We have to give the body the time it needs, the space it needs in order to absorb this stretch. So if you're comfortable closing your eyes now, continue to monitor the stretch, and if at any point you feel like the stretch is subsiding, maybe fold in a little further. Check to see if you're clenching in your jaw or shoulders or across your eyebrows. And perhaps take a clearing exhale breath to allow for more softening in these spaces. What sometimes happens when we get into the hips is that we just simply transfer that tension to other areas of the body rather than releasing that tension out of the body. So use your breath as the portal for release. And keep monitoring your physical body to make sure it is soft and relaxed. We're going to take 5 more breaths on this side. When your 5 breaths are complete, if you are seated, you can come back up onto your hands and knees or make your way into downward facing dog to lengthen the backs of the legs. If you're on your backs, you can uncross your legs and hug your knees in and maybe rock across your lower back if that feels good. Or if you'd rather be still, have your feet as wide as your mat, your knees resting into one another, and your hands in Yoni Mudra on your lower belly. Yoni Mudra is the thumbs gently connected and the index fingers gently connected. So you're making this triangular shape in between your hands. This helps us to focus on the lower belly and the pelvis, and maybe helps us to invite more breath into that space. Wherever you are, take 3 more breaths in your counter pose or your transitioning pose. And then speaking to friends that are on hands and knees, we'll start the second side of pigeon or deer pose. So you're sliding your left knee towards your left wrist. You're wiggling your left heel over to the right side of your mat. You're extending your right leg back behind you, rooting the pelvis back and down, maybe connecting a prop under your left hip if you need one. Having your hands on the floor for support or coming up onto your fingertips and lifting your chest for a few breaths. Creating a gentle back bend, creating space in the front lines of your body. Keeping that left foot flexed, deciding whether that left heel stays closer or moves further away from your midline. And then from here, maybe you start to hinge forwards at your hips, bringing your forearms towards the earth or onto your props. Same with your forehead. This is Pigeon Pose. Deer Pose is with a bent right knee, so sliding that right knee to bend, maybe placing your blanket under the right knee, maybe wiggling that left heel a little further forwards if that feels appropriate, and maybe coming down onto your forearms here. Deer Pose. Third option, friends on your backs, it's thread the needle, lying on your back, right knee bent, right foot to the floor, left leg to the sky, turning out the left leg, crossing the left ankle onto the right thigh. Here you are. Maybe that right foot stays on the floor, or maybe onto a prop, or maybe both legs to chest. Hands behind the shin or hamstring on this right side. Keeping the foot flexed always, keeping the knee wide always, maybe adding a bit of movement across the lower back, maybe being still. And as a side note, we know the 2 sides of the body are very different. We know that the left side of our body is cooler. It is our yin side, and so it is often a little tighter. And so we know that we can make choices for ourselves that serve our unique sides. So what you did on the first side was appropriate to that side, but now you have to make different choices, maybe. Making sure that once again you're in a place of stretch and length in this outer left hip and thigh, but you are not in any pain. You might also just need to adjust the pose because this side does feel tighter, or maybe this side feels better for you. So even if you did pigeon pose on the first side, maybe on the second side you're in thread the needle, and that's fine. Listen to your body in this moment and let that be enough. When we get into the hips in this way, it can be a really nourishing and grounding experience. It can really help us connect to where we are, how we're doing, what we're needing. But the hips can also be an emotional centerpiece for the body. It can be quite triggering to get into the hips and to be in these places of release. It can bring up memory, emotion. So I want you to be very kind and compassionate with yourself wherever you are on your journey here on your mat today. If you're needing some more of those clearing breaths, take them. Experience those releases on your exhale breath. Or if things ever just feel too much in any given shape here, you have the power to come out, to make another choice, to find something different. Let's take 5 more breaths wherever you are. And once again, if you're in pigeon or deer pose, you might choose to come back to tabletop or downward facing dog. If you're on your backs and crossing your legs, maybe bringing your knees in or rocking across the back, or maybe return to stillness, feet wide, knees touching, hands in Yoni Mudra. Wherever you are, taking 3 breaths. Just moving instinctively, intuitively, releasing that left hip. Releasing a cleansing breath. For our next pose, we're going to meet in a seat. So if you're coming from down dog or tabletop, come down onto one hip and bring your legs forwards. If you are on your back, roll to one side and then come all the way around to a seat. You might sit on your blanket for cushioning and warmth. You might choose to place a bolster under your long legs. I'm going to give you a more restorative version of a forward fold to do, which does involve the bolster. And once the bolster's there, you can widen the knees, widen the feet, let the toes roll out. So you've got this kind of soft bend and openness through your legs. If you don't want to take this version, you can take a more traditional forward fold with the legs more parallel, feet flexing up to the sky, legs your hip distance apart, with or without this bolster underneath your legs. So showing you the more restorative version first, you're inhaling to sit nice and tall, your hands are on your legs. And as you exhale, you'll hinge forwards at your hips and start to slide your hands down the legs, maybe towards your shins, ankles, or feet. You're looking at the space between your lower legs and just noting where you're feeling the sensation. For me, it's in my middle back and then into the lower back and out to hips and thighs. If you're in a more traditional seated forward fold with the legs more parallel and you're folding forwards here, you might feel more of the stretch in the backs of your hamstrings. So just notice what you're needing, where you're needing it today, and choose a version of this fold that works for you. One final option is to place blocks in between your lower legs. You can stack them at any height so that your forehead has a little shelf to rest against. This can offer a really nice release for your neck from holding your head up. Continue to breathe into where you're feeling this stretch. And continue to notice moments when your body starts to soften more and perhaps invites you in a bit more. Maybe when that happens, you fold a little further forwards. Maybe you change the height of these blocks so your forehead folds forwards a little more. Just notice what feels appropriate, what keeps you in a place of stretch and length and applying gentle pressure to the body, so this is never passive. And let's take 5 more breaths. After 5 breaths, you're starting to lift your head, slide your hands up your legs, roll up through your spine, and exhale your breath at the top. We're going to come down onto our backs now. You can keep your bolster under your legs, just bend your knees. And if you have a blanket underneath your seat, you might expand it so that your whole back can lie down on it, or you can remove the blanket. You might like to bring your little chip foam block or cushion or folded piece of clothing where your head is going to be. This is a great option if you suffer from any dizziness, vertigo, high blood pressure. You'll want your head a little elevated. Come on down. And right now you have your feet rooted to the floor, your knees are bent. We're going to press down into our feet. We're going to lift our pelvis up and we're going to slide that bolster underneath our sacrum. If that's not for you, you can keep your pelvis to the floor, no problem. Or you could always choose a lower prop to put under the pelvis, such as the chip foam block or a folded blanket. Once you're here, let's widen our feet, connect to the knees, bring the hands into Yoni Mudra, so the thumbs are touching, the index fingers are touching, hands are placed on the lower belly, elbows are relaxing on the floor, eyes are soft or closed. I want us to simply focus on lower belly breathing. So when you inhale, you're expanding into your hands, into the lower belly, which in turn moves breath into your lower back. Being in this shape with the knees connected also helps with releasing any tightness we might be experiencing in the lower back. I'm just enjoying a few breaths like this. If it doesn't feel comfortable to breathe so deep into the lower belly, you can keep it more shallow, no problem. Our intention though is to just shift from always breathing up in the chest space and the upper back, and start to connect more with the lower region of the body, this belly and lower back, the gut space, the reproductive space. These are our homes of creativity and fluidity. In Chinese medicine, they call the gut the second brain because it tells us so much when we listen to it. It tells us when we are nervous or excited, when we are anxious or in anticipation, when we sense that something is not quite right. It's always sending us messages, but sometimes we don't listen because our headspace takes over. What would it be like if we only made choices from this space of the lower belly and the messages from the lower belly? Now feel free to remain like this. This is wonderfully nurturing and nourishing. Or join me for a hip flexor stretch. So shuffling your feet back into parallel, you'll hug your right knee to your chest and hold either your shin or around the back of the hamstring again. Try and avoid holding the knee joint if you can. From here, you'll start to slide the left leg down the mat, pushing away with the sole of the left foot, Hugging the right knee close and relaxing your shoulders. Breathing in and out of the lower belly. If this feels too much around your hips, you can always bend a little more into the left knee. Maybe even put the sole of your left foot to the floor. If this feels good, keep pushing away with the sole of that left foot. Not only is this creating a nice release in the hip flexor, but also in the psoas, that deep stabilizing muscle that literally connects our lower body to our upper body and is often very tight. It wraps around our inner thigh and over the top of our hip bone, and connects to our T11, T12 on the thoracic spine. It's not so easy to stretch. This is one of the great releases for it. So just take 3 to 4 more breaths. Draw your belly button towards your spine. Place that left foot back onto the floor, followed by your right foot. We'll simply swap sides so as the left knee comes in, hands around shin or hamstring, right leg begins to slide away. Find your version of this pose, which is not only great for the hips, but it's also wonderful for your digestive system. You're gently massaging your digestive tract by hugging one knee into the chest at a time. You're massaging your ascending and now descending colon. And this can help with elimination. Keep relaxing your shoulders to the floor. Keep releasing, cleansing exhale breaths as they bubble up to the surface. Rather than shifting the tension from one body part to the other, let that tension be released through your breath. Taking 3 more breaths. Planting your left and your right foot back on the floor. Press down into your feet, lift your pelvis, remove your props from underneath you, and then roll all the way down. Connect the soles of your feet together, let your knees go wide for Supta Baddha Konasana, Recline Butterfly Pose. Maybe use your blocks under your hips or knees if you need some extra support there. If this shape feels really good in your body, you can play with how close or how far away your heels are to your midline. If you find you always go into the same version of the shape, experiment. Take your heels further away. What would that feel like? Or bring the heels closer to you. What would that feel like? Perhaps this will change the stretch for you. Another option is to put a block or 2 underneath your feet. So your feet are raised in this position, which might give your hips and knees a little more space. You can have your hands closed, either on your inner thighs or lower belly and heart. Or you could open your arms wide into a T shape or in a diamond shape around your head, backs of the hands to the floor. Give yourself lots of time and space here for breath. Using your inhale as an opportunity to expand the front lines of your body. And the exhale to soften and relax the back spaces of your body. Perhaps in this moment you can start to think about how you have shifted through this practice. Thinking about this work we've done in the hips to ground and center. But perhaps also we have stirred things up for you. Perhaps you've had a moment of clarity or inspiration. Perhaps you've had time for processing, shifting your awareness. Just notice how you are absorbing the practice and what's coming up for you. Let's take 5 more breaths. When you're ready, you can connect your hands to the outsides of the legs and bring your knees together. Remove any props from underneath your body, other than the one behind your head or the blanket under your back. Just begin to lengthen your arms and legs in Shavasana, corpse pose, arms facing up, shoulders nuzzled underneath you. Exhaling your breath as you completely soften and relax into final rest. I'll call you when it's time. If you have more time to dedicate to your Shavasana today, then please stay as you are. If, however, it's time for you to come out, start to deepen your breath and start to bring a little movement to your fingers and toes. A little movement to your wrists and ankles. And take a nice full body stretch as you inhale. And then hug your knees to your chest as you exhale. And rock generously on your back until you roll to your side. And then slowly come all the way up to a seat, Sukhasana. Observing how it feels to sit, to breathe, to be still. And how the work here on your mat has aided in your ability to drop into this place. Let's close our practice with a sealing breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth. In honor and gratitude to the hips for their ability to connect us to the earth, to show us inspiration and creativity, to help us move through processes. May we continue to nurture and nourish the hips and the pelvis. May this practice today stand you in good stead as you move through the rest of your day. It's my pleasure to guide you. Namaste.